When I was younger, I was a gymnast, and I think I was a gymnast because that was the closest thing I could find within my culture that was like yoga, right? It was this process of bending the body and going within and finding cool ways to move through life, move through yoga postures or asanas. I didn't really start practicing yoga with a capital Y yoga until I was 18, and then after that it really just blossomed within me. I was so curious about this practice and always wanted to go to India, always wanted to kind of go on this spiritual pilgrimage. And it really started, I was in Egypt first, and Israel in the Middle East, and then traveled through India and Asia, and was just like passionately, starvingly hungry to get my hands on any kind of practice or tradition that would somehow help me liberate from this personality ego structure that I felt was restricting my wildness, right? It was like this idea of like the search for the wild, the search to somehow break free from the societal box, the brain parasite in my mind that kept me from just being my own self. Alchemical movement is really about going with the body's natural tendency, embracing who we actually are, rather than fighting and struggling against our own innate wisdom, right? Because actually the way our bodies are shaped and what is our own body's natural tendency is where our wisdom is at. So a lot of times the way yoga is taught in the West, it's about divorcing ourselves from that. We look at how the body actually moves and we try to square it off, straighten it out, put it in one plane. Alchemical movement is really about listening rather than telling the body what to do. It's about listening to what actually wants to happen and working out for each person what is the correct alignment for their own unique structure. Yoga for me is a process of alchemical transformation. It's a way of really looking at the body and feeling the body and moving in the body. I practice yoga a little bit differently than I think it's often taught here, so I think that can be summarized by this idea of yoga as being this like going internally, and I feel really called to practice yoga in a more kung fu kind of way where there's like staying open to the outside world, keeping my feelers open, how to move through life actually, rather than how to simply go inside and disappear and work with the inner self. I think the real difference is that I'm really strongly influenced by Axis Syllabus and this idea of getting off of the linear. So a lot of yoga is actually really about gymnastics, I think, in the way it's taught in the Western world. And what I mean by that is not just about tricks, but actually about staying in this linear pattern, this way of moving through by squaring the hips, squaring the body, actually distorting the body actually, rather than following our own architecture, which is a lot about moving it in triaxial motion, moving through space in a way that actually makes sense for our bone structure, rather than for getting as many yoga mats in a room as possible and staying on this linear path. And I think the reason why I feel most passionate about that is because it's really patriarchal, I think, to stay within the lines, to have someone else tell you how to move your body, rather than going inside and finding what actually makes sense for each of our unique bone structures, each of our unique anatomy. It feels to me like a really fundamental part of how to be in our lives, how to move our bodies, how to move through space, how to actually use this amazing body that we were inhabiting, right? We're these spirits that came into these bodies. It's like, how can we actually use this incarnate experience? And for me, yoga is really about practicing that, practicing mindfulness, practicing awareness, practicing embodying in our bodies and in this world.